Well, for more on these protests in Nigeria, I'm now joined via Skype by a journalist based in Jos in Nigeria, Samson Omale. Samson, thanks very much indeed for joining us. These protests have been escalating and the police are retaliating with deadly force.
In the last 1 hour, we've had reports from Lekki, which is the epicenter of this protest in the commercial city of Lagos, where live bullets were used and also military personnel were also deployed to quell and to literally disperse the protesters. As we speak, there are reports that at least 4 persons have been killed in the last 1 hour, and the protesters are beginning to call on the Nigerian government to at least retreat and allow the protesters to disperse peacefully. And this is coming on a day where not just Lagos State, several state governors, including Ekiti State in the southwest, Plateau State in the north central, and of course, some other cities have also declared a 24-hour curfew. Now, what we see is that some miscreants and hoodlums have hijacked the process where they go about this peaceful end-task protesters. And what they're doing is to try to disrupt them. And we're also beginning to see videos coming out of places like Abuja, particularly where it appeared that the government allegedly is behind the hoodlums, who are going after the peaceful end-task protesters as we speak at the moment.
So police are saying that these protesters have been damaging police property, and this is why they've, I suppose, enhanced the force that they're using.
So that's where the challenge is. You have on one side the NSAS protesters who largely have been peaceful, largely have not, created any scene. They've not looted shops, they've not harassed, they've not been violent, they've not destroyed public property and all of that. On the other hand, you have these hoodlums and miscreants who are neither pro-SARS or are really against the NSAS protesters, but are going after the peaceful protesters, and then, of course, unleashing their terror on public property, including police stations. In the last couple of days, we've seen jailbreaks in place like in a state called Benin, where over 1,200 people were freed from the prison, and then also several police stations being touched, in some cases completely burnt. And government is looking at this and say, hey, look, we cannot sit back and allow this to continue. And that's why they have, imposed a 24-hour curfew. And of course, they defied it. And I must say that, Peter, that the protesters actually defied, the curfew imposed on Lagos State as they continued to, with their peaceful protests, only for them to be interrupted a few hours ago, just about an hour ago, when those military personnel were sent an anti-riot policeman to disperse them, leading to the death of several of them.
The way it's going, one gets a sense that the authorities have seemingly lost control and that these are now quite desperate measures that they're using.
Yes, sure. Because again, there were times that, as we speak, let me also tell you that President Muhammadu Buhari has not directly, and I use that word very carefully, addressed this situation. He only mentioned it in passing in 1 or 2 events. And that's one other thing they are holding against the President Muhammadu Buhari. He's not come out to engage the protesters in any way. Again, the government said they have a challenge because they don't know who the leaders of these protesters are. I mean, they can't pin it down to someone or narrow it down to some leaders of this protest. So I think that has delayed the way and manner. And again, this is the first time in this country's recent history that you have a protest that is lasting more than a week. It is the 13th day, Peter, that this protest is ongoing, and it's unlike anything the government, the central government has witnessed in the past, because you will have labor strikes, you have labor protests in 2, 3, 4 days at most is done. But this time around, you have an army of young people who are resolute, who are determined, and who are ready to have an expression. And they are going after, they're going after the government, asking them that they must meet their demand. And of course, their demand must be met, or else they'll continue with their protests.
The way it's carrying on, one might start to make comparisons with the Arab Spring that we saw in North Africa, where a movement started over a specific issue, but then it turned into general issues, and before we knew what happened, the head of state had been removed. Could this escalate to much more than just police brutality issues?
That's where the concern is, Peter, because again, the protest kept moving and kept, evolving as the days goes by. Because again, at some point, it was end SARS, and then the police immediately came up with a replacement for the special anti-robbery units with SWAT, the Special Weapons and Tactical Team. And then, of course, the protesters just wouldn't have any one of it, even though the federal government has, and of course, the Nigerian police have promised that they are going to do everything within their power to ensure that these reforms happen. But again, the protesters are now saying that, look, end bad governance, that we're having too much of bad governance in Nigeria. So if you see the way the protests across the country have evolved, we're getting very close. I can tell you that we're just at the precipice now. We're just living on the edge that these guys are not willing to back down, and they are already saying that, look, we need to have government listen to its citizens, that over time they've not done what they were elected to do. Most of the promises, have not been fulfilled, and this time around, I think we're edging closer and to a point where they say, okay, look, we may likely be asking for a change of government, but that's where the government don't want the discussion and this protest to go to. They are insisting that, look, President Muhammadu Buhari and all the elected officials came through the ballot, and if Nigerians are angry, they are not satisfied, they should also go through the ballots to elect someone else when his tenure is over. But the way it's going, and particularly with the incidents this evening, I can tell you that in the next few days will be very interesting, and Nigeria will be a very interesting place to watch in the next few days.
So is this growing right across the country? Is this a national sentiment, or is this in the major centers, really?
So it's a little bit complex and it's dynamic. In the south part of Nigeria, where they are predominantly Christians and, of course, much more educated, this protest is literally lighting up all the cities from Lagos to Edo to Osun, Oyo. Most of the southern states. You compare that with the north. As a matter of fact, where, sometime by the end of last week, the northern governors, we have 19 of them, actually met and took a decision that they are not really against the end SARS protest. They are not really against ending SARS, and that the protest shouldn't even happen because SARS has been beneficial to them. So when you have that north-south divide, you begin to ask yourself, is this something that is a sentiment that pervades the entire country? But what you now have is that even within the 19 northern states, you have several states, like where I am right now, Plateau State, who in the last 1 week have consistently embarked on that protest. You have places like Taraba, even Kano, which is the commercial nerve center of northern Nigeria, had a bit of some protests today, and we're also getting reports that a few persons were killed there. So it's across Nigeria. And with the way government has gone about handling this is also aggravating and making more people angry that they are willing to really come out and stick their neck.
And the sad deaths are not going to end this. It's, if anything, going to embolden the protest even more.
As I speak to you, the reports we're getting from Lagos at the scene of this latest shooting that happened about an hour ago is that the protesters have gathered all the dead bodies and they are sitting with the dead bodies. Peter, you can imagine what that means. They're not willing to go, and they've gathered the dead bodies and they are sitting and, of course, trying to draw attention. And where it becomes even more critical for the Nigerian government is that this has assumed a global dimension. The United Nations beginning to speak about this. You have world celebrities from sports stars to movie stars, already having a hashtag. You have the Twitter CEO also, joining and identifying with Nigerians. with this. So it's beyond Nigeria as we speak right now, and that's where government is also finding it very difficult to find a better way of handling this. What government is more interested in is end the protest. Just end the protest first, then we can continue to talk. And the protesters are not willing to end the protest and saying that, look, it's been years and years of distrust, from government officials where they promise one thing and they never follow it through. So they're saying this time around, we're not going to stay back and tell us, hey, end the protest and we're going to see what we're going to do. This time around, until something tangible, until something concrete is gotten from government, they are not willing to back down at all.